My first aim is to make it a Caribbean sport. And to do that, I think we've got to get a number of countries in the Caribbean playing the game on a regular basis.
It is the only game that I know of that was actually started in Barbados.
I don't know if there's a single person that invented it. I do know, even if I wouldn't say that he invented it, we accrue a lot of credit to Lance Bino for his contribution to the development of the sport. The game originated in Barbados, give or take a few years in the early 1930s.
Around the Bridgetown area, that is where it originated. As a matter of fact, road tennis would have died a long time ago had it not been for the love of the game by these people in St. Michael.
You had a number of impoverished people who would have seen games such as lawn tennis and so on being played and were just unable to afford the equipment and the facilities to play lawn tennis.
And what the young boys did is that they took the scoring system of table tennis, they took the lawn tennis ball, they removed the skin, the fur covering from the lawn tennis ball, and they painted the table tennis court on the surface of the road, and that is how road tennis was born.
This is why road tennis really sprung off, because you would draw a court in front of someone's house. The guys would just take grass or chalk or anything and mark out two equal halves in the road.
We used to paint the court green back in the old days.
White lines and green body, just like a lawn tennis court. The courts were varied in size. I think there was a whole number of different court dimensions in play throughout the island.
As time went on, it became regulated. Now it is 10 feet by 21 feet, and the net is 8 inches tall.
One of the innovations that I thought was really nice, and it has now become standard, is that the court is now yellow lines and blue main surface.
Since we started playing the game at night, we discovered that blue shows up better under the light, and so we've gone to blue and yellow, which also incidentally is national colors of Barbados.
There's a chap, there's a little bowler called Malcolm Marshall who bestrides the cricketing world like a colossus. He was probably the greatest bowler we ever produced in the Caribbean and possibly the greatest in the world ever. And he was an ardent fan of road tennis. Whenever he came back from a tour, shattering Aussie stumps and so on, he'd always come straight into the local neighborhood and play road tennis. And after his death, which was a real big blow to us in the road tennis fraternity, we did a tournament in his honor. It meant that the game is a community-based sport. So, for example, if you look at a picture like this, you'd see that this is really a small avenue. That's just a very, very ordinary sort of Barbadian houses, and it gets people together in a very community-based format that there's no other sport that does it.
Road tennis can be played from all ages. A lot of our players are older than 40. We got some players who are 50. We got some that are 60. We got one player who is 70 years old. He's probably one of the best old players that we've got around the place.
Gilmat Bavell, who is probably the oldest living player, but was an outstanding player in his youth. When I knew him as a road tennis player about 20 to 25 years ago, he was extremely good. He had a wonderful style. He was sort of a crowd pleaser kind of guy. After he hit the ball at you, he would drop the racket. And then if you happen to retrieve the ball, he'd pick the racket up and hit it at you again, then drop the racket again, you know? When I was a youngster, he was an old, established player.
Road tennis, they tend to peak later, like maybe in the 30s and the 40s. People really reach the full potential. And it doesn't have only to be a competition sport also. It can be exercise. So it is a game that can cover a vast age group. So now we need to have road tennis players in places like this, where in all areas where we'll be free from traffic and so on. It's no longer a sport that you can play, on the roads.
One of the beauties of road tennis is that it's a very low-cost sport, which is one of the reasons it's done well in Barbados, and we feel it would do well in the other Caribbean countries. It kind of quickens the pulse when you really think of road tennis establishing itself in a place like Brazil. And places like that, like China and so on, I think road tennis, once introduced and understood, can be a phenomenal success.
It can be a more money-making thing than lawn tennis or table tennis.
The smallest kid in the most remote part of this world probably recognizes the name Bob Marley. As a West Indian, you have to stand back and say, well, here's this guy that has just exported our Caribbean culture worldwide. Hopefully we can do something similar with road tennis.